global news, and we begin with Pakistan poll panel moves to oust Imran as PTI chief. China announces nationwide loosening of COVID restrictions. Suspected suicide blast at Indonesian police station. US, Australia invite Japan to step up troop rotations, and United Nations says Ukrainian civilians face test of survival. Stay with us for this and more stories. On politics in Islamabad, Pakistan, Pakistan's Election Commission has initiated a process to remove ex-Prime Minister Imran Khan as the chairman of his Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf PTI party over false statements and incoherent declaration. The case links allegations that Khan bought gifts given by foreign dignitaries from the state depository called Toshakhana in Urdu and did not reveal them in declarations submitted to the Election Commission of Pakistan (ECP). Tuesday's move against Khan follows an order the ECP passed in October when it found Khan guilty of corrupt practices and disqualified him from a parliament seat he won in 2018. A notice has been sent to the former Prime Minister, and the case will be next heard on December 13th. PTI politician Babar Awan, a lawyer who has represented Khan in various cases, said, according to reports, that the ECP is merely a regulator of elections and that it cannot stop a person from holding party office. He said Khan was permitted to contest 7 parliamentary seats in October by-elections, which obviously means he is also qualified to be the party head. Khan won all the 7 seats. Awan added that what happened with former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif will not apply to Khan. Sharif, Khan's political rival, was declared dishonest by the Supreme Court in ruling in 2018, resulting in his removal from office and being banned from parliamentary politics for life. He was subsequently removed as the head of his Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz PML party. Lahore-based lawyer and constitutional expert Abu Zar Salmaniazi said Khan's case differs from Sharif's. On coronavirus pandemic, China has announced a nationwide relaxation of COVID-19 curbs following a wave of unprecedented protests against the measures. The National Health Commission, NHC, in a statement on Wednesday said asymptomatic COVID-19 cases and people with mild symptoms will be permitted to quarantine at home rather than in field hospitals that some have criticized as unsanitary and overcrowded. The health authorities' new rules also limited lockdowns to individual apartment floors and buildings rather than entire districts and neighborhoods. The change marks a significant rollback compared with earlier in the year, when whole communities were locked down, sometimes for weeks, sometimes after just a single positive case. The NHC said high-risk areas should now be exactly defined by building unit, floor, and household, and must not be arbitrarily expanded to whole residential compounds and communities. It also said the frequency and scope of PCR testing will be reduced, with mandatory mass testing long, a tedious mainstay of life in zero-COVID China restricted to high-risk areas and schools. People traveling between provinces will also no longer need a negative test taken within 48 hours, the NHC said, and they will not be required to test on arrival at their destination. The health authority went on to urge localities to resolutely rectify simplified one-size-fits-all and adding extra measures for COVID-19 prevention, and to reject and overcome formalism and bureaucracy. The rollback of curbs follows street protests that broke out in November in numerous cities, including Beijing and Shanghai, over zero-COVID President Xi Jinping's signature policy. Prompted by a deadly fire at a partially locked down building in the western city of Urumqi, the protests were the largest in China since Xi Jinping assumed office in 2013. Beijing has justified the zero-COVID policy as essential to save lives and avoid overwhelming the healthcare system, but the public frustration appears to have finally persuaded the opinion of officials who had championed the policy as superior to the approach of foreign nations that have opened up in hopes of learning to live with the virus. Wednesday's announcement came hours after the government released further data showing the deteriorating economic impacts of zero COVID. Imports and exports fell in November to levels not seen since early 2020. Imports in November fell 10.6% year-on-year, the biggest drop since May 2020, according to the General Administration of Customs. Exports fell exports rather fell 8.7% over the same period. Indonesia authorities have said a suspected suicide bomber who was also armed with a knife has detonated a device shortly after entering a police station in West Java, killing one police officer and wounding many. The attack took place at about 8:20 a.m. local time during roll call at the Astana Anyar police office in the city of Bandung, the provincial capital. Head of the Public Information Bureau for the National Police, Ahmed Ramadan, said Bandung police were investigating the incident in coordination with Indonesia's counter-terrorism unit. The ISIL-linked Jama and Harudawlah Jad group may have been behind the attack, Ibnu Sahendra of Indonesia's counter-terrorism agency BNPT said, according to reports. Jad was barred in 2018 after a sequence of suicide bombings at churches in Surabaya, the country's second biggest city. The group was also behind a deadly attack in Jakarta in 2016. Wednesday's attack also wounded 8 others, included one civilian, Ibrahim Tompo, a spokesperson for the West Java police said. Footage from the Indonesian broadcaster showed damage to the police station with some debris from the building on the ground and smoke rising from the scene. Hardliners have carried out raids at churches, police stations and other locations in the world's largest Muslim majority nation, although their occurrence has declined in recent years. Going forward, the United States and Australia have agreed to strengthen defense ties, including by adding the rotational presence of U.S. air, land, and sea forces in the oceanic country, citing shared fears over China's actions around Taiwan and in the East and South China Seas. The announcement on Tuesday followed meetings between the top U.S. and Australian defense and diplomatic officials in Washington, D.C. The two countries have also agreed to invite Japan to join in our force posture initiatives in Australia, he said. Austin cited China's rise and Russia's invasion of Ukraine as the reasons for improved U.S.-Australian defense ties. In a joint statement following Tuesday's talks known as the OSMIM, the two sides said that to strengthen U.S. land presence, they will increase locations for U.S. Army and U.S. Marine Corps forces in Australia. He said they will also identify priority locations to support the enhanced U.S. presence with runway improvements, aircraft parking aprons, and storage for fuel and munitions, as well as prepositioning stores, munitions, and fuel. Washington sees Canberra as a key partner in attempts to push back against China, and analysts say Australia could have a crucial logistical role to play in the defense of Taiwan against any move by Beijing to reclaim the strategic self-administered island. Australia's Northern Territory is already host to recurring military collaborations with the U.S. Thousands of U.S. Marines rotate through the territory annually for training and joint exercises, and Washington is planning to redeploy up to 6 nuclear-capable B-52 bombers to an airbase in the region, according to reports. On Russia and Ukraine war, the United Nations humanitarian chief says Russia's sustained attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure as temperatures fall below freezing has created a new level of need in a war he has called senseless. The Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Martin Griffiths, detailed to the UN Security Council on Tuesday the toll of widespread explained displacement and suffering since Russia's invasion of Ukraine on February 24th. He said the situation has been aggravated by Moscow's recent raids on crucial utility infrastructure, which has left millions without access to heat, electricity and water, and added another dangerous dimension to the humanitarian crisis caused by the war. Over 14 million people have now been forcibly displaced from their homes in Ukraine, including 7.8 million who have sought refuge elsewhere in Europe, Griffiths told the council. A total of 17,023 civilians have been killed, including 419 children as of December 1st, he added, citing data from the UN Human Rights Office and warning the real toll is far greater. There have been at least 715 attacks on healthcare facilities. The United Nations Security Council has met dozens of times on Ukraine since February, but has been unable to take action in any meaningful way. Russia is one of 5 members of the 15-member body with veto power, along with China, France, the United Kingdom, and the United States. There are more stories. U.S. midterm elections 2022, Democrats win outright Senate majority after Georgia victory. According to reports, Democratic U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock has defeated Republican challenger Herschel Walker in a Georgia runoff election, ensuring his party an outright majority in the Senate for the rest of President Joe Biden's term. The Warnock's victory on Tuesday, Democrats will have a 51-49 Senate majority, gaining a seat from the present 50-50 split following John Fetterman's victory in Pennsylvania. However, there will be a divided government, with Republicans having flipped control of the House of Representatives. In last month's midterms, Warnock led Walker by 37,000 ballots out of almost 4 million votes cast, but fell short of 50% threshold required to avoid a runoff. The senator appeared to be headed for a wider final margin in Tuesday's runoff, report said. Walker, a former football star, conceded defeat late on Tuesday, saying he was never going to stop fighting for Georgia. Walker's campaign was overwhelmed by recurrent mistakes and claims by former girlfriends that he paid for their abortions. Even though he has campaigned for the procedure to be outlawed, he has denied the accusations. Walker's defeat is also a setback for the former U.S. President Donald Trump as he seeks the Republican nomination to run for the White House again in 2024. The ex-resident endorsed Walker and dozens of other high-profile Republicans in this year's midterm elections, but he ends with a mixed record in his most competitive contests. U.S. court dismisses suit against MBS in Khashoggi killing. A federal judge in Washington, D.C. has discharged a lawsuit filed by the fiancé of slain journalist Jamal Khashoggi against Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, citing U.S. President Joe Biden's granting of immunity to the prince. On Tuesday, United States District Judge John Bates suggested that he was unwilling to throw out the lawsuit, but had no choice given the Biden administration decision to grant immunity to the Crown Prince. Khashoggi was killed and dismembered in October 2018 by Saudi Arabian agents in the kingdom's consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, an operation U.S. intelligence believed was ordered by the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince has denied ordering Khashoggi's killing, but acknowledged later that it took place under my watch. Attorneys for the U.S. Department of Justice said in November court filing that the Biden administration had determined Prince Mohammed as the sitting head of a foreign government enjoy head of state immunity from the jurisdiction of U.S. courts. In appealing the circumstances of the Crown Prince's appointment as head of state, Bates was referring to the fact that the prince was only in September named prime minister in a royal decree. Khashoggi, who had criticized the Crown Prince's strategies in Washington Post columns, had traveled to Saudi Arabia's consulate in Istanbul to obtain papers he needed to marry his fiancée Hatice Cengiz, a Turkish citizen. His fiancée, who had waited unknowingly outside the consulate as he was killed, and a rights group founded by the slain journalist before he died, brought the lawsuit, which also named two top aides of the Crown Prince as accomplices. The killing opened a rift between the Biden administration and Saudi Arabia that it has tried in recent months to close, as the U.S. vainly urged the kingdom to undo its oil production caught in a global market plagued by the Ukraine war. Human rights groups and Saudi Arabian exiles have urged that sparing the prince from accountability will give authoritarian rulers around the world a green light for future abuses. Again on politics, ahead of impeachment hearing, Peru's Pedro Castillo blasts critics. Peru's President Pedro Castillo has accused his opponents of undermining democracy as he faces the third impeachment attempt of his embattled presidency. Castillo, who started a 5-year term in July 2021, is anticipated to appear in impeachment proceedings beginning on December 7th to respond to accusations of moral incapacity. Peru's Congress issued a summons for the sitting president last week. On Tuesday, facing a congressional vote that may remove him from office, Castillo rejected the allegations of corruption in a speech, instead accusing his rivals of trying to blow up democracy and disregard our people's right to choose. A former teacher from a rural part of Peru, Castillo's surprising ascension to the presidency in 2021 has been followed by tumultuous time in office. He has already survived 2 impeachment attempts, the newest results from a constitutional complaint filed by the prosecutor's office in October, alleging that Castillo was leading a criminal organization that profited from state contracts and obstructed investigations. Congress has also accused Castillo of incompetency. He has appointed 5 cabinets, at least 80 ministers during his tenure. The controversy around the president takes place amidst a bigger context of political uncertainty in Peru, which has seen 7 presidents and 4 ex-leaders detained or wanted for charges of corruption since 2011. Castillo has criticized the impeachment efforts as backlash from powerful interests seeking to reclaim power that the people took from them at the polls. But Attorney General Patricia Benavides said that her office has found very serious indications of a criminal organization that has taken roots in the government. While Peruvian presidents normally have immunity against criminal cases, a constitutional complaint permits Congress to carry out its own trials. Peru's 130-member legislature passed a motion to commence the impeachment process on December 1st with 73 votes in favor, many from right-wing parties. But the threshold to remove a president from office is higher, requiring a 2/3 majority or 87 votes. Earlier impeachment efforts in December 2021 and March 2022 have failed to clear that threshold. Castillo and members of his family are facing 6 corruption investigations. The president has denied any wrongdoing. Now in Africa, Somalia forces and allies retake main town from Al-Shabaab. Government forces and allied militias in Somalia have recaptured a strategic town that the Al-Shabaab armed group have controlled for 6 years. Pro-government forces entered the town of Adan Yabal in Hirshabelle, about 220 kilometers, 140 miles northeast of the capital Mogadishu, after the Al-Qaeda-affiliated fighters pulled out without resisting, President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud said, according to reports on Tuesday. The army and local clan militias known as Makawasli have retaken swaths of territory in the central states of Galmudug and Hirshabelle in recent months in an operation backed by United States air attacks and helicopter support from an African Union AU force, ATMIS. Adan Yabal Mayor Mahmoud Hassan Mahmoud said the army and militias took control of the town and the surrounding district of the same name without meeting resistance on Monday. ATMIS said Al-Shabaab had used Adan Yabal as a training base. The force welcomed its return to Somali government control. The fighters, who have been waging a bloody war against Somalia's internationally recognized federal government for 15 years, also used the town as a logistics hub. Mohammed El Amin Sohif, head of ATMIS, said the broader campaign was delivering destructive and decisive blows against the group. President Mahmoud, who declared an all-out war against Al-Shabaab after his election in May, said the attempt to rid Hirshabelle and Galmudug of the group was in its final stages, with only pockets of resistance remaining. First of the country's major urban centers about 10 years ago, Al-Shabaab remains rooted in vast swaths of rural central and southern Somalia and continues to carry out deadly attacks in Mogadishu. On October 29th, 116 people were killed in the capital in 2 car bomb explosions at the Education Ministry, and 8 civilians died in a 21-hotel siege on November 27th. Lastly, on global news, COP15 kicks off as alarm grows over dropping wildlife populations. A month after the COP27 Climate Change Summit in Egypt, COP15 on biodiversity kicks off in Canada. The objective for the 196 countries present is to stop the decline of life, and the call for action is urgent. According to the latest World Wildlife Fund WWF report, wildlife populations have on average declined by 69% since 1970. The present swift rate of loss is a direct result of rampant human activity since the Industrial Revolution, the report says. Jen Harkin works for the Global Conservation Division at WWF International, warns that a common framework is essential to be agreed upon, as protecting land and sea can prevent a 6th phase of mass extinction. This is the imperative to conserve the habitats that we have in nature, and the target is to conserve 30% of land, fresh water, lakes and oceans, and restore global ecosystems by 2030. Now, that's only 8 years away now. It's a big deal goal, she said. This framework, known as the 30 by 30, is the peak countries will target towards. Jen Harkin also says that the COP should provide people the tools and knowledge of how to resolve the trend. With a million species facing extinction around the world, the issue is urgent. The world has yet to hit any target on biodiversity. Parties will have 2 weeks from now to overturn this trend. Stay with me for more stories on Zuma Nigeria. Don't go anywhere. You're welcome back. Zuma Nigeria says CBN restricts cash withdrawals to 100,000 naira per week. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has enforced fresh cash withdrawal limits on individuals and organizations, which takes effect from January 9th, 2023. This was contained in a memo issued on Tuesday and signed by the Director of Banking Supervision, Harun B. Mustafa, to all banks. According to the memo, individuals will only be able to withdraw 100,000 naira per week from over-the-counter point-of-sale machines or automated teller machines, ATM, while organizations can access 500,000 naira per week. Banks have also been directed to load only 200 naira and lower denominations into their ATM. The memo reads: 1. The maximum cash withdrawal over the counter by individuals and corporate organizations per week shall henceforth be 100,000 naira and 500,000 naira respectively. Withdrawals above this limit should attract processing fees of 5% and 10% respectively. Third-party checks above 50,000 naira shall not be eligible for payment over the counter, while exempt limits of 10 million naira on clearing checks still subsist. The maximum cash withdrawal per week via automated teller machine ATM shall be 100,000 naira, subject to a maximum of 20,000 naira cash withdrawal per day. Only denominations of 200 naira and below shall be loaded into the ATMs. The maximum cash withdrawal via the point of sale terminal shall be 20,000 naira daily. In compelling circumstances not exceedingly once a month, where cash withdrawals above the prescribed limits is required for legitimate purposes such as cash withdrawals shall not exceed 5 million naira and 10 million naira for individuals and corporate organizations respectively, and shall be subject to the reference processing fees in addition to enhanced due diligence and further information requirements. Further to 6 above, you are required to obtain the following information at the minimum and upload same on the CBN portal created for the purpose: valid means of identification, bank verification number BVN, notarized declaration by the customer stating the reason for the excess cash withdrawal, written approval by the managing directors for drawees withdrawing on behalf of companies. The CEOs of banks must authorize such withdrawals in writing. On 2023 elections, again, Buhari assures of credible polls. On Tuesday, President Muhammadu Buhari has reiterated the 2023 general elections will be free, fair and credible. He said his administration would not permit manipulations of any form. According to a statement by his special advisor on media and publicity, Mr. Femi Adesina, the president spoke while playing host to West African Elders Forum pre-election mediation mission led by former Sierra Leonean President Dr. Ernest Bai Koroma at the presidential villa in Abuja. Former President Koroma, who led the team made of Fatoumata Tambanjang, former Vice President of the Gambia, Dr. Mohamed Ibn Chambas, former Special Representative of the Secretary General of the United Nations, and Anne Iyonu, Executive Director of Goodluck Jonathan Foundation, said they had met with stakeholders across the party, civil society, and Independent National Electoral Commission, amongst others, and we commend you for making it clear, both locally and internationally, that the elections will be free and fair. He commended Buhari for not listening to voices that may have tried to persuade him to seek a third term in office against the laws of the country, noting that other countries look up to Nigeria for direction. And finally, Nigerians in diaspora sue Buhari INEC demand voting rights in 2023. Some Nigerians in diaspora have hauled President Muhammadu Buhari, the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC), its chairman, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, and the Federal Republic of Nigeria to court over the exclusion in the voters' register ahead of the 2023 general election. According to reports, these Nigerians living in the United Kingdom and various parts of the world in a suit marked FHC/ABJ/CS/2119/2022 are praying the court to stop President Buhari and the INEC from further proceeding with the 2023 electioneering process until INEC's voter register and biodata base are updated to accommodate them as registered voters. They said it was their fundamental rights to vote in the 2023 general elections. Therefore, INEC has to include them in the registered voter to allow them exercise their civic rights at the polls next year and every other time, no matter where they are in the world. The suit, which was filed on behalf of the plaintiffs, Barrister Chikwe Nkemnacho and Kenneth Nzbuike Nkemnacho, who both live in the United Kingdom, by Augustine Temfe Nkemnacho, who has prayed the Federal High Court in Abuja to declare that they are entitled to participate in the electoral process by being registered to vote in 2023 and in all elections wherever they are domiciled worldwide in line with sections 13, 14, 42 and 17 of the 1999 Constitution. The plaintiffs said they instituted the suit on behalf of all the Nigerians in diaspora worldwide. They also prayed the court to declare that there is still sufficient time for INEC to comply with provisions of Section 13, 14 and 15 of the 1999 Constitution, noting that unless they are permitted to vote in 2023 elections and subsequent ones, their fundamental rights as enshrined in the 1999 Constitution will be grossly violated. Justice Inyand in Edem, Echo Build to hear the suit, has fixed January 19, 2023 for its mention and to allow the defendants file their respective responses. A recap of major stories says Pakistan poll panel moves to oust Imran as PTI chief. China announces nationwide loosening of COVID restrictions. Suspected suicide blast at Indonesian police station. US, Australia invite Japan to step up troop rotations, and United Nations says Ukrainian civilians face tests of survival. Thanks for watching. I am Lois Turaki. Remember, continual effort, not strength or intelligence, is the key to unlocking our potential. Enjoy the rest of your day.